This story is called An Apple a Day, How Idun is Rescued from the Giants. On a morning of sun and wind and scudding cloud, Odin, Loki and Honir crossed the flaming rainbow bridge to continue their exploration of Midgard. They strode out over hill and gully, moor and meadow, talking and laughing. So content were they to be together on such a day that their minds never turned to thoughts of food until they'd covered many a league, and the sun's rim was on the horizon. "Hey," said Odin then, "my belly thinks my throat's been cut. Which of you's got the grub?" "I haven't," said Loki. "Me neither," said Honir. "I don't think food was mentioned, was it, when we were making arrangements, I mean?" "Dunno," growled Odin. "All I know is—" "Look," Loki pointed, "on that hillside, a herd of oxen. All we have to do is pick out a fine fat beast and do it in, and there's supper." "Ooh," Honir looked doubtful. "Do you think we should? I mean, they probably belong to somebody." "Why don't you shut up, Daddy Longlegs?" rumbled Odin rudely. So the three gods singled out a fine ox and killed it. They cut the meat into great joints, lit a fire and put the meat in the flames to roast. They were so hungry that the smell of cooking made them slaver. "Give it a poke," said Odin after a while. "It'll be about ready, I reckon." But when Loki jabbed the meat with his dagger, blood trickled out. He shook his head. "Not yet." They sat gazing into the fire. Their stomachs rumbled so loudly it was like thunder. Presently Honir said, "I'm not absolutely sure, but I think perhaps—" Loki jabbed the meat again, and another trickle of blood hissed and bubbled on the coals. "Raw," he muttered as the minute we started roasting it. "But surely that's impossible," cried Honir. Odin shook his head. "It's some sort of magic. Somebody's playing a trick on us." "Somebody certainly is," said a voice above their heads. "Look up." They were sitting under a great oak, and when they looked up there was an eagle gazing down at them. "Let me have my pick of the meat," said the eagle, "and your supper will cook perfectly." The three discussed this for a moment, then Odin nodded. "All right," he said, "we agree. We've got to, or we'll starve to death." The eagle spread its wings, flapped down to the fireside and began pulling hunks of meat from the flames. It took both shoulders and the rump. "Hey," cried Odin, "why didn't you? We didn't say you could take all the best bits." The bird ignored him, dragging the meat to a convenient stump and tearing at it with its great hooked beak. Loki was so angry that he leapt up, raised his staff and rammed into the eagle's body. There was a thud and a puff of feathers. The eagle let out a shrill cry and launched itself into flight, trailing the staff. To his horror, Loki found he couldn't let go of his end as the mighty bird flapped away, and he was dragged, bumping and scraping over the rough ground. The eagle made no attempt to go higher, but skimmed the earth, and within seconds Loki's legs and body were bruised, skinned and bleeding. "Stop," he screamed, writhing and kicking on the edge of the trailing staff. "Let me down." "I'll let you down on one condition," said the eagle. "Anything," cried Loki. "I want the goddess Idun and her basket of apples. You must swear to lure her out of Asgard so that I can grab her." Loki said nothing. It dawned on him that this eagle must be a giant in disguise. Whatever happened, he mustn't swear to do as his tormentor wished. Loki silent enraged the eagle. It swooped, dashing Loki against a rocky outcrop, dragging him through a stand of thistles and bumping his raw kneecaps on a fallen tree. "Very well," screeched poor Loki, who could stand the pain no longer. "I swear." At once he was able to relax his grip on the staff. He fell on springy turf, rolling over and over. The eagle shook out the staff and soared away. Loki picked himself up and dragged his battered body back the way he had come. 7 days passed, and then Loki the trickster approached Idun as she strolled with her basket of apples through the meadow in Asgard. "Idun," he said, "I've seen such a sight in Midgard as you wouldn't believe." Idun smiled her innocent smile. "Oh, what sight might that be, Loki?" "An apple tree," cried Loki, "with golden apples twice as beautiful as any I've seen in your basket." Idun gazed at him. "But surely that's not possible, since my apples bestow unending youth." Loki shrugged. "Perhaps the apples I saw also prevent ageing. Anyway, I think you should come with me and see." Now everybody knew that Loki was a trickster, but Idun was innocent and didn't stop to think. Over the rainbow bridge she trotted, at Idun's heels, anxious to view the wondrous apples. The eagle, who was really a giant called Thiassi, was waiting. The minute Idun set foot in Midgard, he swooped, grabbed her with his horny talons and bore her and her basket of apples away to Jotunheim. There he imprisoned her in his stronghold, Thrymheim. "Now," he cried, "the gods and goddesses will grow old and die, but I shall live forever." The situation in Asgard soon became grim. Without Idun's apples, the gods and goddesses began to age. Their beauty faded. They hobbled about in lumpy old clothes and thick stockings, holding their backs and groaning. Their hair was grey, and their conversation was about illness and varicose veins, and how food didn't taste like it used to, and the terrible things young people got up to these days. Odin kept meaning to call an emergency meeting, but his arthritis was killing him, and it slipped his mind. When he finally got round to it, everybody came except Loki and, of course, Idun. We must find Idun, he croaked, fiddling with a loose thread on his fawn cardigan. Has anybody seen her lately? I saw her crossing Bifrost with Loki, said Heimdall. The gods and goddesses looked at one another. Odin sighed. That probably explains why she's missing. Bring him in, will you? They had to search for the trickster, but they found him eventually dozing in Idun's field. They seized him, tied him up, and dragged him to Gladsheim. Odin glowered at him. We know you lured Idun away, he growled, and if you don't bring her back, you're dead. If he doesn't bring her back, we're all dead, grunted Heimdall. I lured Idun away, admitted Loki, but I had no choice. He told the geriatric assembly about the eagle who was really the giant Thiassi. When he'd finished, Odin said, That's your problem, Loki. You took her, you get her back. Otherwise we will kill you. Loki stared at the decrepit but implacable god. Not much of a choice, is it? He nodded. All right, I'll try, if Freya will lend me her falcon skin. Freya, beautiful no longer, gladly lent the skin, and Loki flew to Jotunheim and to the mountain stronghold of Thrymheim. It was a case of lucky Loki, because Thiassi had gone fishing with his daughter. Loki found Idun imprisoned in a small room. Swiftly the trickster cast a spell which turned the goddess into a nut. Seizing the nut with his falcon's claws, Loki launched himself into the sky and flew as fast as he could toward Asgard. It was only minutes later that the giant and his daughter arrived home. Finding his captive fled, Thiassi turned himself once more into an eagle and soared skyward in pursuit of the falcon. He was much larger than Loki, with far more powerful wings. The distance between the two birds shortened. Seeing the eagle gaining on him, Loki beat his wings desperately, straining every sinew to reach the walls around Asgard. Odin from his high seat saw the falcon approaching and the great eagle which pursued it. At once he ordered a great heap of kindling to be piled against the wall. The gods stood poised with burning brands to light the fire at his signal. Loki saw these preparations from afar and dived towards that section of wall. The eagle was so close now he could hear the whistle of air through its pinions. With the last of his strength, Loki swooped low over the wall, hurtling like a thunderbolt into Asgard. Odin at once gave the signal. The gods plunged their torches into the great drift of kindling. Flames roared skyward. The eagle, unable to swerve, flew straight into them. Its wing feathers caught fire, and it fell like a meteor trailing smoke. As it hit the ground, some gods and goddesses ran with spears to finish it off. The giant Thiassi was dead. Loki, who had resumed his real shape, mumbled some magic words, and the nut became Idun again. The wrinkled inhabitants of Asgard came creaking and hobbling from all directions. Idun smiled, handing out apples. Gods and goddesses bit into them. The air was filled with the sound of crunching. The end. And through that story, there were a lot of words used to describe the gods when they were feeling old. If you listen to it a second time, see how many of those you can pick out.